What is going on, guys, and welcome to week 4 of the Underdog experiment, where we are talking about finances. Yes, finances isn't the greatest of terms. I'm going to try to rename that, but if you stick all the way to the end of the stream, I have actually got an idea for this whole Underdog experiment. So with that being said, finances is a working kind of title thing, so don't worry about that, but we are getting there. But the premise of the Underdog experiment is to take advantage of that 10% of your day, essentially the conscious side of your day, that we can essentially have input that will help improve your life. Take advantage of that 10% of your day, because the other 90% of your day, you are essentially on autopilot. And so that being said, this week we are on finance. Now, what I've been trying to do through this whole process is provide you guys tools along the way in this Underdog experiment. This week will be no different, right? This week, what I'm trying to do is change your mindset when it comes to finances, right? Wealth building, money, right? What is your relationship with money? That's essentially what it is. And a lot of people don't like talking about finances. I know it can be really uncomfortable for a lot of different people. So with that being said, today I have a couple things I want to go over. Before we get started though, please remember to like the video. That way this video can get out. Please share it with anybody out there. That way this video can get out there and we can spread the word. Also, before we get started, I have my recommendations, my book recommendations for this week. And I've been doing that for the past couple weeks, past 3 weeks that we've been doing the Underdog experiment. Which actually, you know what we can do? We can change it up, because a lot of different books in this week, so were some great books that I have personally read. They were fantastic for finance, right? Okay. So, being said, some of the books I've read, right? Now, again, I've been doing this for every week. If you do comment in the chat, forgive me because I cannot see it at the current moment. You guys may be able to see both windows. I don't know. I'm assuming you can. I can't see the chat as of right now, so just bear with me for a second. Nonetheless, relevant books. I've been doing this for the past couple weeks. This week on finance, I have all these books here. A lot of them, I would say, are really good books, right? A lot of these books change my perspective on finance, or whatever term we're going to be using in the future. So just be aware that it's a working title, right? A working term, whatever you want to call it. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, Napoleon Hill is one of my favorite authors, right? He's always been one of my favorite. This book, if you've done any kind of personal development, you've heard of Think and Grow Rich. This book is a hard read. I'm not going to lie. This book is 100% hard read. I have read this book, I don't know how many times, like 6, 7 times, and it's still hard to get through like the 6th or 7th time. Like, the concepts in that book are hard, but it's one of those things that a lot of people say, read this book and it will, it changes your thoughts in essentially the relationship with money, right? It does have some really good talking points in there, but it's mostly, the biggest concept grabbing out of that book is to understand that you have to go essentially all in, right? You focus on one thing, and essentially money, right? Being rich, and you focus on that thing, right? You don't let relationships, you don't let anything else interfere with trying to be rich, essentially, right? That's the general theme of that book, right? And it goes through a bunch of different things, but essentially that's what it's about, the premise of that book. So again, that book, I put it on there just because of the fact that it is, if you talk about finance, that book is got to be on there. A lot of people do talk about it, so I just wanted to bring it up. Again, I've read it multiple times, and some of the stuff is still kind of hard to grasp, but I mean, again, there's good concepts in there, right, that you can help and apply. I have found some good concepts in there. The next one I have on there is Unscripted by MJ DeMarco, and also The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. Now, this is one of my talking points I'm going to go over, because of the fact that MJ DeMarco is, I would say, one extreme, right? I think you have two different extremes. Now, this is going into a talking point, but you have essentially like the minimalistic mindset, right? Where you essentially only buy those things that provide you value, that you feel hold value, right? Like you try to not, you're not in essentially the realm of trying to accumulate materialistic things, right? You are just trying to get your freedom by the bare bone essentials, right? And saving almost every penny that you can, right? Being the extreme penny pincher, right? You have that side. And then you have the other side, which is MJ DeMarco, which in my belief, he believes that you should go in like the fast lane, right? And by saying that, now depending on where you are in your life, you can't just go in the fast lane, because what I interpret him in saying in these books, and both books are pretty much the same. One of them is based off his story, and the other one, Unscripted, is kind of more of leaving that 9 to 5 and just forgetting about the whole concept with 9 to 5. Let me actually switch back to, okay, there's no comments in there. Okay. So MJ DeMarco, again, on the extreme side, talks about the idea that you essentially put everything into your business, right? Now, like no matter what it is, every dime that you get, you are trying to get off the ground, right? And you're trying to essentially use all your resources to get to where you want to go and find that one thing that's going to click and work, right? And he has his personal story in here, which I believe is actually the Millionaire Fastlane is his personal story on how he was a limousine driver and transformed and developed this app and ended up using the limousine, essentially like a networking for limousines, and built his millions, right? And that's essentially what he did. And it's kind of that mindset of going all out, right? Now, wherever you are in life, that's something maybe you can't do, right? So again, two extremes. You have the minimalistic mindset, and then you have this MJ DeMarco fast lane mindset, right? Like you're all in all the time. It's again somewhere you fall in between, wherever it is, right? The simple path to wealth it's kind of like fire. It has a lot of stuff to do with, I don't know if you've heard of the FIRE movement, which is another talking point I have, is financial independence, retire early, right? It's kind of that same mindset and it's teetering on the being a minimalist, right? Almost, and just trying to leverage the money that you get and how you can do that, right? So again, you can start to see the difference between these two edge cases, right? You got one, again, penny pinching. Other one is all in, all out, all or nothing, right? Do or die. You're going to be rich, kind of thing. So it's almost again up to that Think or Grow Rich. Nonetheless, this book here, again, I am not a real estate investor, although I've read this book. This book has provided it's like gold, right? And it's rated extremely high. Everyone I've ever talked to about real estate investing is always recommending this book. E-Myth, Real Estate Investor, is like the top thing. And reading this book, it gives you tremendous insight onto everything plus in real estate. Let me just double check in here. See where we're at. Okay. So E-Myth Revisited, that's a great book if you want to get into real estate. I'm eventually going to go down that road. Again, more talking points later to come. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is a book a lot of people don't like. And I can see why, because it goes against social norms, right? Against the system, right? That's why I believe people don't like Robert Kiyosaki, because he goes against the system, working against the system, right? He believes that it's almost like going in that millionaire fast lane, and you should go all or nothing in entrepreneurship, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. You have a dream, you chase that dream, you put all your resources into that dream, and you work until it works. Then you have, again, the other side, which is a safer approach to doing it, right? It's kind of having one foot on base while trying to reach out and do with these other things, right? And so that's essentially what it is. So again, your two different spectrums there. I also added Castro Quadrant, which he talked about. Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his Rich Dad Poor Dad book. That book gets a little bit more into the quadrants, and if that's something you're really interested in, that book is there. I would recommend reading Rich Dad Poor Dad if you haven't. That book changed my mindset about essentially assets and liabilities, right? That's essentially what that's about, and knowing the difference. And so, and then the last book I have there is The Third Door. Now, this isn't really in the financial realm, unless you are an entrepreneur, right? Unless you want to go into that entrepreneur route. This book is a great concept, a great idea for that, because it's his story about how he became an entrepreneur. And, he was going to be a doctor, and this wasn't what he wanted to do, right? He was going into med school, and he's like, I don't want to spend the rest of my time in school. I want to be an entrepreneur. And it was his journey, right? And trying to interview all these super successful millionaires, billionaires, and getting interviews with them, and essentially the struggles he had to go through to get those interviews. So it's actually a really intriguing book. Again, it just goes along to show you the journey into becoming an entrepreneur. And so if that's something you're interested in, I thought I would throw that up there just to kind of have that on there. That way, if you're interested, go for it, give it a shot, and see if you like it, right? So with that being said, let's close this back down, expand this back up, so you can get a big old view of that guy, this guy right here. Yeah. So now I guess we can get into talking points, right? I did hit on some of the talking points. We're going to go back through some of these and keep it, again, at that mindset through this whole thing, right? I think that's important. We're not trying to, here's step by step. Again, I believe everybody is built off of your experiences, right? And I did talk about this in the premiere video, and I think I even talked about it on Friday, is again just realizing that you have to, a lot of these concepts, these ideas are very general, right? Because you're trying to cover a broad audience. Now, you have to figure out what works for you and adapt that tool, right? These are all tools that you're supposed to use to help in your life, right? Everything is a tool in how you adapt it to your life, where you're standing in your life and where you're coming from, right? And your experiences, what you can build off of. This is all what's important. And so to come out here and say, do step A, B, and C for finances, I can come on here and tell you that, hey, it's a simple math equation, right? Don't spend more than you're earning. And then that could be the end of the broadcast, right? There'd be no more live stream, but that wouldn't be very cool, would it? So with that being said, what you want to do is take these broad concepts and find what works, right? That's what I'm kind of hitting on both spectrums, right? You get the minimalist on one end, and then you essentially have MJ DeMarco on the other, extreme entrepreneur, all in, all or nothing, do or die, right? And so these are two different concepts. I think you should adapt. And what I think is important, right? I think you can get stuff out of both camps. And again, figure out, that's essentially what I've done, and figure out what helps you, benefits you at where you're at in your life today, right? Because again, we're all different walks of life. We all are coming from different areas. So that's, again, one thing to keep in mind, right? You got to be kind of general. Take what concepts, apply them, field test them, like we've been doing the past 4 weeks. Field test everything, the different tools that we talk about, and see what works for you, right? Or we can just go back to the math equation and call it good and know that you got to live below your means. Nonetheless, so one of the biggest things I wanted to hit on is we're talking about, well, we're going to go with wealth building, right? Because finance is kind of not a word. Again, I'm going to try to change all that, and I'll talk about that later. Wealth building. The biggest thing here to remember is your greatest resource is time. If you don't have money, you have time, right? And I think a lot of times, again, we fail to forget that we only have a limited amount of time. We don't have this abundance of time, so we're trying to leverage time to essentially build wealth, right? So that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And a lot of times, when talking about this, MJ DeMarco's book talks about this a lot, and it changed a lot of my understanding or my perception of money, right? Is that you are exchanging time for money, right? And how do you leverage that? And that's what I've been talking about during these Underdog experiments, is how do you leverage the resources that you have? And in doing so, in time, right, you're trying to leverage your money. Sorry, I just lost train of thought here. Hold on, give me a second. So time for money. The biggest thing here is exchanging time for money, right? So do you want to essentially work 60 years of your life? Like, I'm sure we've all seen that scale. It's been out there, in essentially which you work a solid like 60% of your lifetime is at work, right? And the rest of the time is essentially your time. And I've seen many different charts where it's chunked down in different ways, right? Into how you are spending your time, right? You're not really spending a lot of your time doing the things you want to do, right? Like, people look forward for the weekends. They look forward to spending time with their family. They look forward to all these other different things. But ultimately, it's that time for money, right? Do you want to work your ass off, for a couple solid years to hopefully build something that can propel you and essentially hit a specific age and propel you to live the life that you want to live for the rest of your life? Or do you want to just pay for it incrementally, right? And essentially go the 60 years, right? Enjoy your weekends and work for 60 years, right? Or do you want to work your butt off essentially for a couple years, right? Yes, you do got to work extremely hard for a couple years, but it pays off, right? You're hoping it pays off. If you're a person that likes to work hard and you're a person that strives to want to free up that time, right? Like, this is a concept you got to understand, is that you are exchanging time for money, but how can you leverage that, right? You can essentially spend 5 hours, or, it's not even take an hour. Let's say we spend 2 weeks writing a book, right? That's something you've created. Yes, there's a lot of upfront time, but you have it. Now you have a resource. Now you have something to sell, right? And so this is what I mean by this concept of time and trying to leverage your time by creating something in which you can essentially sell, right? Yeah. Now, yes, you do have to sell it and all that, but you have created a resource, right? Something of value that you can sell. And so that's ultimately what you're looking for, right? And I know sales isn't something big. I have never been a big salesperson either. I don't like sales. But last week we did talk about people skills, and we know that that sales is extremely important, right? Because we're always trying to sell ourselves. And so again, we're trying to leverage time by creating essentially value, right? Creating things like the YouTube videos, right? Like, this is something else you can do. How do you leverage your time into creating essentially wealth, right? Is by creating things that you do once and you can essentially keep putting it out there. It works 24/7. You aren't doing anything else, right? It's just that initial upfront cost of time to be able to do that. So that's what I wanted to come across as far as the time aspect of everything. And then again, to talk about the two different spectrums, right? You have the minimalist mindset, and then you have the MJ DeMarco fast lane mindset. And on that minimal side, you've heard about the FIRE, the financial independent retirement early. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. There's different forms of FIRE. There's fat FIRE, lean FIRE, barista FIRE, and coast FIRE. Fat FIRE being, you have more than an abundance of money, right? Essentially to be able to live whatever kind of lifestyle that you want. Then you got lean FIRE, which is kind of the more extreme penny pinching. I'm free to do what I want, but I'm essentially penny pinching, retirement kind of thing. And then the other two are more like, I work part-time, but I am kind of just feeding off my retirement, doing a lot of index funds. They do a lot of index funds, growth, stocks, side gigs, stuff like that. So that's essentially a FIRE. And then again, you go to the fast lane, where you are a producer and not a consumer. And the mindset on that side is very much, all in, all at once. Let's do it now. And, hit or miss, right? I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do everything it takes. I'm going to use all my resources to get there, however, by any means necessary, right? So this is, again, two different spectrums right there. But ultimately, from that aspect, I want to essentially go into how can you get to where you want to go, right? Maybe you are like, well, I don't want to work the 60 hours, right? Like the best ways of doing this, I've done a lot of research on this, and as far as like determining how you're going to get there, yes, you're going to have a side gig, right? You're going to have cash flow, and the best thing to do that, right? You can work a 9 to 5 job until you get enough cash flow to leverage it in other aspects and propel yourself to where you want to get, right? And some of the best ways I've found to do this, right, is through business. Business is your biggest cash flow, right? If you're not working 9 to 5, a business can be unlimited, right? It can be uncapped. And so that's the best thing. And especially if you can do something like an online business, which, I know back as a kid, it all seemed like, that's just some flash that people are trying to sell you, right? But the truth of the matter is we are headed that way, right? Like if you can leverage, if you think about it, this is one thing I always think about, right? Like, and I've read through one of the books, I'm pretty sure it was actually MJ DeMarco's unscripted book. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But nonetheless, I came across this thought, this idea that, you can start a brick and mortar. We all are aware of the brick and mortar business, but your reach is essentially local to the area. And that is where you're kind of handcuffed, right? Especially with the stuff that's going on now. You don't have a lot of reach. Where if you have an online business and you're focusing on information, right? Information. I mean, you can also do selling online as well, but your reach is global, right? It's not just limited to your local area. And that's things to keep in mind when thinking about business, right? Business can be, again, the biggest cash flow, right? Don't handcuff yourself to brick and mortar and be limited to essentially the local economy, right? Like you want your reach to go well beyond that and not be limited to, again, your local area. With that being said, the next thing I have as far as when you're trying to wealth build, right? You hopefully get the cash flow, whether that's 9 to 5. I mean, you can do the traditional exchange hours. You're going to have to get money from somewhere. So that's typically where you start. Is working a 9 to 5, maybe getting a gig on the side of a small business, and then hopefully build that up to where it will overtake the 9 to 5, have a bigger cash flow income. And then how essentially do you leverage that, right? Now you can do it through real estate, which is something I haven't done, or something I want to eventually do. But there's real estate, and then there's also the stock market, which the stock market is something I am using as a tool to leverage the money that I do get, right? So that is something to look into, right? And being more aware. And this is something when you start getting into the stock market, you hear a lot of crazy stories, especially recently, about young kids, using options and doing all these different things, which is not something you should do, right? These kids, the risk management is out the window, and they're trying to leverage tons of money that they don't have to make these essentially crazy. They are bets, right? Essentially what it is with an option, you're betting that at the end of the expiration of that option, that the price will be at this or below this particular price point, right? So, but with that being said, the stock market can be a great place to leverage your money, right? And the best way to actually do that is to dollar cost average on a particular stock, a company that you believe in, right? And this is to not just pick whatever you hear out there, like Tesla or something like that, right? It's to essentially actually do the research on companies that you're interested in. I myself am a big Tesla fan. I have done a lot of research on Tesla, and I love the company, right? Like I invested in Tesla a year back ago, right? Before the hype. So a lot of these different things, right? You want to use these tools, right? Like the stock market, to leverage dollar cost average on companies you believe in, right? Now, the reason I say that, the reason I think this is important is because you want to be able to educate yourself on these things, because a lot of people just throw it in a 401k. They let someone else manage that money. And the truth of the matter is, over the lifespan of that 401k, you are actually losing, I think it's on average like $140,000 during the lifespan of that 401k. That's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money that you are essentially working, again, 60 years for. And so, and a lot of times these money managers, they are just throwing in an index fund. If you understood what an index fund was and you did the investment yourself, you can eliminate that middleman, and that's extra cost that you don't have to pay, right? And that's what's important. Let me just shrink this a little bit. Let's get some good eye movement going on here, right? So always, oops, maybe not. I don't know what I just did. Oh yeah, well there's always that. Yeah, there we go. That works too, huh? I'm here to sit here messing with everything. Not at all doing what I should be doing here. There we go. Shrink it down a little bit. There we get a little bit more other display here. So again, with that, try to leverage it through one of those three, right? One of those three is essentially what's going to help with your cash flow, what's going to help you leverage your money, right? Either you get real estate or stock market are big ones that are out there. Those are what are out there. You can also speculative investments like Bitcoin, stuff like that. I do have stuff like that, right? You got to plant enough seeds to be able to get that. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be able to put risk on the table to be able to take advantage of some of these things, right? I think that's extremely important when you're talking about finances. But with that being said, I think that is pretty much it. I don't want to go again too much deep into the weeds in this thing. I just want to kind of open up some thoughts, some ideas on finances and allow you guys to kind of get a grasp of it, right, on what to do. And what I've found has helped me to try to leverage finances and wealth building, right, and realize that there's tools out there that, again, we are not educated on, that you should really educate yourself on, and realize that you can cut out a lot of middlemen. You can save a lot more money by learning these things, and you don't have to get too crazy with it, but a little bit of education goes a long way on some of these things, especially finances and saving your money. Because if you don't, right, people will take advantage of you if you don't have some baseline understanding. And so with that being said, let's see, what else do I got on here? I think that's pretty much all my talking points for everything. Yep, one with all the books, bam, bam, bam. Goals for this week. My goal for this week is to look at revenue streams. That is one thing I've been working on. It's kind of something I've been looking at anyway through this thing. It's just leveraging that. And what I wanted to actually talk about here is that I think what I'm going to actually do is to take this Underdog experiment that we've been doing over the past 4 weeks and leveraging that into a book, right? Some kind of book format that I could use, self-publish this book, right? And then also use it as a resource for my channel. And so that is something that I am focused on this week, is looking into self-publishing and generating a book from this Underdog experiment, kind of everything that we've talked about through these 4 weeks, throw that into a book and throw that up on Amazon. And that's essentially what I am planning on doing for this week, is looking at those different sources. So revenue sources, I do want to probably look at Patreon as well. I am vaguely familiar with it, so I know what is entitled or essentially enroll with that. But I think that's my goal this week, ultimately. It's nothing crazy, but I know it's a lot of work. So I have looked at it previously, but it's actually doing the work. So I again will be taking this Underdog experiment and hopefully creating a book and publishing it on Amazon. So that's what my goal is. I know ultimately what I want to do as well is changing the names, right? I got to come up with some better names than finance and time management. I need something a little more punchy, right? So, so ultimately what I'm going to do is probably rename some things. Obviously the cover and stuff like that's going to be different. But I will let you guys know when that is generated and put it out there, right? And share that experience, right? Because it's about discovering possibilities, igniting change. That's what we're about here, right? And taking advantage of the 10% of your day, the 2.5 hours of your day, and leveraging that, right? And so, again, this is a great way to do it, is to document something. I could have blogged this whole Underdog experiment, or, do YouTube live streams, right? And then document the process, and then essentially I have my framework already, right? And then taking that, transitioning that to a book, add some more into it, add some more meat to the bone, essentially, and then put it out there, right? And see what we got. So that is my goal for the week. Also, I wanted to hit on, I did finish The Introvert's Edge to Networking, which I do have on here as well. Let's put this on here. Sorry for the sound effects. I like to do some sound effects sometimes. But it did crack my top 5, The Introvert's Edge to Networking. This book I'll actually be doing a book review on this week. Should be coming out sometime this week. I'm hoping to actually knock that out tomorrow. But that being said, I that book was a phenomenal book, right? And I don't want to get too much into it, again, because I will be doing a book review on it. But that book, it is business oriented, but I think for any introvert, any of Matthew Powell's books, right, are phenomenal, especially for people that are trying to that are introverts, right? I think he makes, all his books are great in the aspect that he keeps it simple, right? Like he has a simple system. You apply that system, and that's how he has become extremely successful, right? If you don't know his story, I highly recommend you pick up his book, Introvert's Edge, his first book, and then I think it's Introvert's Edge to Business. And then you have this one to networking, and this one again I will get into the book review, but it breaks down into networking and essentially just preparation, right? Everything comes down to preparation. And if you are prepared, just like anything in life, right? Like a lot of stuff I talk on my channel is, some hard truths about life, right? And trying to make yourself better while dealing with these things. But ultimately, it's being prepared for the worst and expecting the best, right? And then when the worst comes, you can take the blow, right? You can take the side swipe in life and be okay, because you have the confidence in knowing that no matter what happens, you can deal with it, and you'll be okay. You'll bounce back, right? If you're preparing for the worst, you will always bounce back faster than not being prepared at all, right? And hopefully, in your preparation, you come across some luck, and then that's all you need, right? Preparation meets luck, and then there you go. There's your opportunity, right? You create your own luck. You create your own opportunity by being prepared, no matter what happens. And so that's what I've always been about. I've always tried to improve my life in that fashion, is always being prepared. And there's a lot of days where it's not easy, and you have to push yourself through. But if you can do it, if you can put in a little bit of work every single day, some days aren't always a win, right? Some days you're just trying to win most battles to win the war. And so that's what you have to do, is prepare to win as many battles as possible. It's not saying you're going to win them all, right? You just have to win the majority of the battles, and you will win the war. So that's ultimately what matters. Again, this week on finance, just went over some general concepts, just trying to change the mindset about different ideas, about finances. Provided you guys some resources. If you guys know of any other resources, please leave a comment down below on what's probably helped you on finances. Again, I will when I create this book, hopefully give it a more punchy wealth building or something. I don't know. I have to go back through because time management isn't going to work either. Maybe the efficiency train. I don't know. We'll come up with something jazzy. I don't know. We got to figure it out, but or I'll figure it out, right? But nonetheless, look forward to that. As far as finances, that is pretty much it for the Monday session. If I believe I got 2 viewers on here. If you guys got any questions, it's hard to tell with YouTube sometimes if there's more than 2. I know sometimes there can be more, but the thing doesn't show you that. If there is no questions, I think that's pretty much it. We're wrapping up. Again, final week. Just kind of carry on a little bit here in case anybody's got any questions. Final week, Friday, we do have recap of this week. Again, my goal is revenue streams, primarily on self-publication book is what I'm working on. But Sunday, I will have a premiere, essentially going over the summary of the Underdog experiments and then essentially where we're going in with the lives. Again, I do want to continue on with the lives. I have a couple of ideas, trying to let them marinate. I find anytime you have a good idea, just let it marinate, and you normally come up with better ideas, right? Or you can expand that idea into other different things and stuff like that. So it's always good to sit and think on it, let it stir a little bit. So I think I'm going to do that. And then for Sunday, look for the premiere, and then you know where the lives will be going after that. Again, this week, look for a book review. I have the book review for the Introvert's Edge to Networking. And also, I should be coming out with another video on the rebuild as well, self-care. So look for that one. That one should be coming out this week. There's a lot going on. Hope you guys are having a good week. Hope you guys have a good week, actually, because it's only Monday. Here I am thinking the week's already done. But with that being said, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Kickoff week 4, finance. Let's get it rolling. I hope you guys got some good goals this week. And until Friday on the recap, you guys have a great one, and I will see you then. Peace.